favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
Something like that. Judd's Hockey Show, Judd's post-game hockey show after a wild ass-kicking. Whatever you want to call it, it's Judd, it's AJ, and we are here to react to, what was a pretty busy day with news because we're going to get to the Jared Spurgeon thing, which is part of why we are doing this podcast. But might as well start with a wild 7-3 loss. And AJ, I'm just going to tell you right now, just as a starting point, okay? And there were a ton of breakdowns tonight. The defense in their own zone, it was terrible. All of that being said, though, this is why the Wild should just accept their fate. This is why, like, I'm not even upset by it at this point in time. And I do not think, there might have been a goal or two that Gus wants back, but he gave up 7 goals, and I don't think he played poorly. I think he made some great saves. I'm not upset by this. I think that this is where acceptance becomes crucial. And I think if you are Bill Guerin, you need to accept the fact that the season's done. Like, play hard. And you know what? The Wild tried tonight. There were times, third period, they were hopelessly behind and they were trying. It's over. It's done. And tonight was another example of why when you play a team that, by the way, is not a killer team, that this is not the 2-time Stanley Cup champion. This is a Tampa Bay team that's very competent and good, but this is not the team that won cups necessarily. But their high-end talent just kicks your ass. And I think that is the key of why it has to be all about acceptance now.
Yeah, and it's genuinely frustrating. Like, it's a letdown to me that we're calling it this early in the season. There's still about half the year left in a sense, but it's the hole that they've put themselves in and how good other teams look. And even if you go on a run, you're not going to get the points back that get you in a good spot. In a sense, doing good is going to only shoot yourself in the foot and push you further away from what your end goal is. Because that this team right now, with the way that they're playing and the way that SSPF is saying, with kind of the puck luck going against them here tonight as well, this team cannot win a Stanley Cup. And if you do end up playing better, you're pushing yourself away from getting a guy that can potentially help you win a Stanley Cup down the road. So either way, winning is losing at this point, whereas losing could potentially be winning down the road. So it's going to be a long second half of the season. For this club, for the fan base. And I want to say, the optimist in me says, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be worth it at some point, as long as, like you said, Judd, they commit to it. Yeah. Like me on Twitter, sometimes you got to commit to the bit. And the bit for this team right now is to just lose and get a high draft pick. Commit to who you are. You talk about identity, Bill Guerin. You talk about your culture. Put aside the culture and just accept your true identity. You are not Batman. You are the guy in The Dark Knight that dressed up as Batman and then immediately got caught by the Joker. You are the faux Batman here. You are the schlub who is at beer league with a gut belly. That's fine. Just be that guy the rest of the season and get a good draft pick. That's totally fine.
Do you really think the puck luck cost them? Like, yes, there was some puck luck that went against them, but I think it just came down to Tampa Bay's skilled guys kicked your ass and you couldn't stop them. And I'm sorry, if Jared Spurgeon was playing, he wouldn't have stopped him either. Like, you're just not, and I say this all through a very important prism, which is this. And I told this to Declan and Jesse Pierce on JHS on Wednesday, and I will stand by this until I'm simply proven wrong. I think the future's bright, man. Mm-hmm. I think the future's bright. We talked about this 2 podcasts ago, Age. You got some really good prospects. You've got some really nice, talented. I mean, Marco Rossi had some difficulties in his own zone tonight, but he also made some really nice plays offensively, scored a goal, looked good to me. Faber's starting to struggle, but my God, the kid is being asked to, I think I have become the ultimate Brock apologist, but I mean, what you're asking that kid to do. So like, I don't think all hope is lost. I just think what you said is exactly right. What I said is right, which is just accept your fate. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to the Spurgeon injury itself, but with him not surprisingly being declared out for the season, I immediately saw, Bill Guerin might go and try to trade for a pending free agent defenseman. Why? Like, what are you going to give up? I mean, I wouldn't give up any draft pick. Like, if you want to go get somebody for free off the scrap heap, okay, I guess so. But I mean, I'm not going to give up any of my draft picks because I might use those. I might use them to make trades. Like, what's the incentive? Just accept it. Acceptance. Just, you know what? And heck, I love tonight because you played young defenseman and you find out. And there's no better time to do it. There's no better time to do it than right now and find out, because you're going to have kids coming up. You're going to have competition, and this will improve everybody. This will also give you a really nice, and the more we watch this age, John Hines, I think, is here. And yes, it was an 11-3 start, and we all raved, and they looked damn good. They were moving the puck really well. But since then, 2-8-1 with Hines, and it's looking more and more like he is here as for the time being a gatekeeper until they can get to training camp next fall, which I'm fine with as well. So I'm not going to go out and make a trade. I'm not going to go out and make some type of substantial deal to perhaps I can get Matt Dumba back or something. Screw that. Just go, as Scott says, and as we've said about teams before, embrace the suck. It's fine, especially because the suck is probably only going to make you stronger with your prospect pool that I already like.
Quickly, I do need to address this comment. I did lie on the good old X machine on Twitter. We were told, it was to my knowledge, that Jessie Pierce would be joining us. She had some other stuff come up. So I do apologize for anybody coming specifically to see Jessie. I understand why that's a bigger draw than myself, but sorry to disappoint there. With this team, I feel like it's just we're constantly waiting, Judd. We're constantly waiting. You wait for a big signing, a big superstar. Back in 2012, July 4th, they signed Parisi and Suter side by side. I was young and naive at the time. That was the greatest day of my life.
And I loved it. I was old and I loved it. So don't feel
there
bad.
We go. Eventually, the sun sets on that. Okay, you know what? That wasn't the move. But guess what? They've got this guy, Kirill Kaprizov. They drafted him, and he looks pretty darn good. They've moved on and all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. He signs a 3-year extension in the KHL. Oh, boy. Now we got to wait 3 more years. Oh, he finally comes over. Thank goodness. But now you're still in this cap, salary cap dilemma. You don't really have this. You're playing essentially with a hand tied behind your back compared to every other team. You still have another year after this that you're dealing with it. And now this season, it's injury after injury that's stacking up. You're just constantly waiting. And now, once again, it's like, well, it looks like the future is going to be it. I'm just sick of waiting. So this has been.
But you're going to have to wait.
Yeah. And there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it.
I'm with you totally. I hear you. And I agree with you. But you're going to have to wait again, man. Like there's no getting, and I'm with you as well. Parisi and Suter, the day that they signed will forever be the biggest free agency day in the history of this state. Cause like Favre came in here, but that wasn't like, oh my God, you got this guy for a long term. Like for one day, the Wild made us the Yankees. We in this state were the Yankees. We were the Dodgers. We were the big, bad, badass. We're going to kick your butt. We're going to go sign 2 top guys. And it helped a team that wasn't at that point in time selling out. And yes, we all bought into there's going to be a Stanley Cup parade down West 7th. It's going to be fantastic. That was totally erroneous in retrospect. But you're going to have to wait again. And that's what Guerin has to accept too. Like that's what, and perhaps he has, that's not in his DNA, but we are going to have to wait again. But I would argue that the future looks again optimistic if you just allow this to go. And I saw a comment, it's now passed on my screen, from Jason about, are we tanking or are we just this bad? And my response is this. Okay, there. Is it safe to say we are tanking or are we this bad? I think that question is very, very difficult to answer, because I think it dovetails. I think both parts of that question dovetail into the same point, which is you need to accept, like you don't purposely, for the most part, unless you really tear things apart, you don't purposely tank. Okay. But you're not very good. You're not that good. And I think what you do is, like, you don't necessarily yet, it's not like you're stripping guys away, but when you look at Spurgeon being hurt and now he's gone, don't replace him. Okay. Is that tanking or is that just acceptance? as Diane says, we are this bad. And yeah, they're just not that good. But I don't also hate what I see. There's things I hate. There's players, Marcus Johansson, dude. I don't know what we're doing here. Boldy, I know he's got a bunch of goals with Hines, but he continues to appear and disappear. He is a true magician in the sense of the word, that he disappears at times and then he comes back and then he disappears. I didn't see Kaprizov much tonight, but I thought Rossi, offensive zone wise, played well. The defense looked, certainly the entire defense had problems, but I don't think that it's just I don't think this team is that good, and I think that's what presents the opportunity to sort of just sit back here and try and get as high in the lottery as possible and not be upset about this, because I'm not watching them now, and I'd be curious to get your response to this. I'm not watching them now and thinking, man, if they just had one guy give a bit more, or one guy there's some guys I'd love to see subtracted. But I watched tonight and I just said, you know what? Tampa Bay, in a very good Eastern Conference right now, is a wild card team. Okay. That was a wild card team. And so I watched that and I say, do the Wild stack up at all? And the answer unequivocally is no.
Yeah, and this was my fear about some of the recency following the win over the Islanders in the celebratory 5-5-2 win for Marc-Andre Fleury. Yeah. They looked amazing that game. But that's the Islanders. And the Islanders are they might be able to battle for a wild card spot down the stretch here. They're back a few points, but that is not a solid hockey team. The Tampa Bay Lightning are a solid hockey team, and like you said, they are a wild card team right now in the East. The Wild, you saw them against the Flyers, you saw them against the Coyotes. This is what the norm is. They're going to have that kind of pop up, and the guys are just going to be buzzing, and things are going to be firing all cylinders. Pucks are just going to find their stick, and then hey, look at that empty net. Let's just tap it in. This is going to be the night that is going to be the majority of nights for the Minnesota Wild here moving forward the remainder of the season. I see a lot of people always talking, and it's been, I think, a little more prevalent here the past couple of days. Put Merrill on waivers, send him down, just cut him.
Oh
no. I'll tell you why. I am going to be a John Merrill super fan. He is my MVP the next half of the season. That guy is going to be a first name on my lineup card every single night if I'm John Hines. No reason that he should be in the press box. Amazing to help if we're going for a draft pick, which this is what I know. I know that they're not technically eliminated. And growing up, that was my well, if they're still got a chance, then I want to cheer for them. I can't do it. This team is going to make me just go gray. I'm going to have bags under my more so than I do already. They need to just embrace what they are right now, which is not a very good hockey team.
What did you make of the Between Periods report on the ESPN Plus telecast from Kevin Weeks, who, by the way, is very plugged in? So he's a former player. He's not a journalist, but he definitely is plugged in as hell, and he tries to get stories. What did you think of his report that it sounds like Guerin already getting calls on Flower? We've talked about this, and if Fleury wants out and wants to go to a contender, absolutely, he deserves that respect. But what did you make of that? And as we cycle through this, I will maintain that if I had my druthers, I would much prefer trading Gustafsson, because the return would be so much more. And I don't think that the way things shake out, that Gustafsson is this huge part. I mean, again, he played well tonight, dude, and they gave up 7 goals. I can get, what's his face, Zane McIntyre from Iowa to give up 14. Yeah. Who cares if it's 7 or 14? So what was your response or your thoughts about that report, and how would you approach that?
I think that's good news to me, in the sense that I think other teams it confirms my belief on what this team is. And I think other teams, if other hockey minds and front offices are making the call and saying, hey, what are we thinking here for one of your netminders? I think they understand what I am led to believe and what I see on a nightly basis with this team. I would like to hope that Bill Guerin is smarter than what we. I'm not that's going to be a poor way of phrasing it, but I want to think that he played the maybe we will, maybe we won't card the other day in that pregame presser about what's he going to do. Are we trading? Are we not? I think he would like to believe that they can make a push, but I think he knows that they won't. And so I want him to make a decision on what he's doing sooner than later, because I don't want the stock market to crash on him, if that makes sense. Don't wait too long, because if that clock continues to tick down and down and down, the seller, if you're stuck with them, you can only demand a certain price. If you do it now while there's time, you can essentially set the market at this point if you really wanted to make a move. And I'm with you. I think Gustafsson would be the guy to go, but we've had this conversation, I think now 4 or 5 times about Marc-Andre Fleury, where if he wants to go, you have to let him, because there's going to be teams that, like Kevin Weeks said, are calling. Toronto, I think, probably is a club that would be interested. I think Colorado would be an interesting one now, because they do need help. Alexander Georgiev is not looking like their guy.
How about the Devils? The Devils need goaltending help. And the Devils, when Jack Hughes comes back, they might be a fringe playoff team, but if they get healthy, if you were to send the Devils Gustafsson and a defenseman, you would get a ton of capital back. You'd get so much back from them. But I'm with you. You know what? We are seeing like some very important deadline deals made now, way before the deadline, which we didn't used to, but it feels like in recent years we definitely are. And I'm with you. Set the market, establish the market. Don't sit back and wait and wait and wait. And then, as it gets down to the gun, which is it feels like what Fletcher did, and certainly what Fenton did the year that he made some trades. I think he traded Nino early and then waited. But anyway, the point is, I love the thought of making trades, of being the first to make trades. And New Jersey definitely needs a goaltender. And they definitely, because I think that Dougie Hamilton might come back for the playoffs. He might not. So just floating that out there as a possibility of a team that definitely would be a good fit in at least one area with a Wild.
What do you think of this question by Jacoby Booman? First off, quick note of kind of the timetable of things. We saw Bill Guerin, I want to say, was it last year, the John Klingberg trade that was like it materialized out of the blue.
At the end,
he had made the call with Anaheim. They said, you know what, we're going to sit pretty. We've got some other options. Guess what? No, they didn't. They just didn't like the price at the time, and that only hurt them, because Bill Guerin called back. Guess what? The price dropped. Granted, maybe it didn't work out for the Wild, but for the time, that was a great trade on his part. You didn't give up a whole lot for a guy that at the time, like on paper, it's kind of what you wanted. It's kind of what you needed. But the point is, make a trade sooner than later. That's it. But to Jacoby's question, what do you realistically think that Gus can bring back for the Wild in a trade?
I had been saying that I would sort of make the type of trade that the Wild made with the Blackhawks for Flower, which was, I think, a second round pick that would have kicked up to a first round pick conditionally if the Wild had made the Western Conference Finals. Silly us. They got eliminated in the first round. But I got a note from a guy a couple of days ago on X that said that's too low. And I thought about it. I was like, you know what? You're probably right. I would probably go for a first round pick, because he's got term left. Gus does. He's got term left. He's younger. He could become their, if you send him to the right team, like Flower could go to Colorado and back up Georgiev. If you send him to New Jersey, Gustafsson could be like their top guy. So I would probably go for just flat out at least a first round pick.
Yeah. And if anything, it's got to be the weakest conditional thing of all time, which is like they win a game in the playoffs, like they don't get swept. He starts more than half of their postseason games, something along those lines, just for the sake of the illusion of, on paper, some people are going to say, oh, they only traded a second round pick, blah blah blah. But yeah, Gustafsson, given his AAV, given that he's not a one and done, he's not a rental this year. First round, whatever the final result should be, a first round. whether that is in illusion or solidified up front, but first round, absolutely.
And if you were to trade him in June or July, you would not get that. But at the deadline with a team that's desperate, and again, when Jersey gets Jack Hughes back, and they've had a very roller coaster like up and down season, but if they make the playoffs and they have things right and some goaltending, they could make a run. So yeah, I think a first round pick.
And to Robbie's point here too. To Robbie's point, you're not only going to get the pick, that's almost the cherry on top. You're going to get more losses because, like you said, and I think I agree, he played, despite the score, pretty solid tonight for giving up that number. I mean, it's tough when your defensemen are just turning the puck over right at the top of the zone with nobody else to cover the puck carrier. But you're going to add more losses, which then in turn, it's a win-win on both ways. You're getting more capital and you're increasing your own capital because you're going to lose more games.
This last thing off this game, this penalty kill is just absolutely atrocious. The Lightning now in their last 2 games against the Ducks and Wild are 6 for 6 on the power play. Their power play is the best in the league. The Wild, I looked this up at the start of the game, was 5th from last, 5th worst power or PK in the entire league. I'm sure they're last now. This is the type of thing too, where I think Hines, like, you've got to get this fixed. You got to get it fixed next year in training camp. But I mean, that PK is just absolutely atrocious. Okay, let's finish up with Spurgeon talk.
Let's do it.
So he's out for the season, which we speculated on. Now, I thought it was the shoulder that he had hurt in Chicago in the preseason that was a reoccurring problem. Well, it turns out that Guerin announced today it's not the shoulder. It is wear and tear for a hip and back problem. Jared is what, 33? 34 years old age?
Yeah, 34.
34. Okay. So this is worth being concerned about. Number one, when you hear about hips and hockey players, like, Patrick Kane had that new resurfacing of his hip done, and he's come back for Detroit. But that being said, he missed extensive time, and it derailed his career completely for a year plus. A back problem, I guess if a hip problem with a hockey player is atop your list of uh-ohs, a back problem is a close second. I think you got to, and I hope he's back next season. I hope everything is fine. All of that being said, I think it would be naive not to be concerned about his career. And if and when he does come back, with as small as he is in the position he plays, just how much he looks like the Jared Spurgeon who was at the top of his game a couple of years ago.
Yeah, this is, I don't know if there could be a worse player for this to happen to on the Wild, just because of like his age, his role, how like his level of play prior to the injury and what he's been doing. Like there's not, maybe Brodin, but to my mind, there's not too many defensemen that fly under the radar for their performance as much as him. He is, like, he's not the biggest of guys, but his mental game, like knowing where to be, where to position his stick, how to cut guys off, drive them wide, given a lower frame. I mean, it's top of the class stuff. But when it comes to this injury, I mean, if it's one or the other, it'd be a completely different conversation. But needing back and hip stuff, that's your skating. That's your mobility. That's your flexibility out there. You're constantly being in that hunched over position. You're constantly in and we talked about this with Kaprizov as he was kind of easing back into his normal form. But the hips, you're constantly opening your body up. You're shifting your weight. If you don't have that type of that health, you just can't play at a high level. So it's either A, full recovery. Things get back to normal. Everything's good next season. B, you're not at 100%. You're not what you were, but you're smart enough and good enough to be able to adjust your game. And given he's a smaller guy and all this stuff, he's already had to adjust his game. I would like to see, given who he is, how much more he can, or C, it's just maybe he comes back, but you can tell it's not the same guy. It's a considerable drop off in playing ability. It's, he almost becomes probably a liability out there. And then you have the conversation of it changes the viewpoint of the fan base of, like I said, the recency I think is so heavy with fan bases where if he goes and plays a half season where he's just a liability, he's wearing the C and all this stuff. the attention's going to be on him. The spotlight's going to be on him because of the comeback. It's not going to be good. And then you're going to have that burden of, will he ever find that form again? I don't think so. If you don't see that right away, it's pretty much all but done.
What concerns me a lot too is 1, his size, and 2, his position, and 3, this is, and we shouldn't be surprised, but with his size and with the position he plays, I mean, this sounds like just wear and tear from trying to compensate for being small, right? Trying to move guys out, trying to go into corners. I mean, we've seen this guy, and to his credit, but he's taken some hellacious hits. Like, and this is all part of that. And so my concern is, okay, and I'm glad I'm glad that the team is addressing this now, because it gives him a chance to get back for training camp if all goes well. And there's no guarantee that happens, but if he comes back next year, my concern now is, okay, he's not going to have grown. So, like, is it one or 2 hits again that start the attrition process? So I think this one is worth keeping a very close eye on and being very concerned about. Now, all of that being said, it's going to give certain guys more of a chance.
Yes.
You know, it's going to give guys a chance. And they do, again, have some defensemen coming up. Just as importantly, as we discussed the last time that we recorded an episode of this show, and as you talked about, this gives you a chance, if you get a top 10 pick, which you should, to take a defenseman and eventually replace him. So all of this, we have to wait and see. But I certainly did not expect the news that came down. I expected that he would be out for the season. I did not think that it would be this. And this has definitely been a hip in the back, made me rethink where Jared Spurgeon is at with this team and what the realistic ability he is going to have to return as the player that we once knew.
Yeah. And I think Stout here has a pretty good viewpoint on it. And I think I agree with him.
Yes.
I know immediately everybody pulls out who are the UFA D-men out there that the Wild could go and acquire? Who should they go get to fill this hole?
They got more cap space, right? Let's go. Yeah. Let's go see. I heard Dumba. Can you get Dumba? Now, I don't think the Coyotes, who are actually a pretty good team, are going to trade a guy contributing, which I think he is contributing. But yes, now they got cap space. Use that cap space.
That should not be the mindset. That should not be your first priority. If anything, you get another John Merrill. You say, hey, do you have a twin, sir? Can we sign him for the rest of the season?
We got Goose.
Well, how stupid of me.
Pay the Minus brothers. Just pay John Merrill and Goose as your third pair. Like, and you know what? You can rotate them. Play kids one night, play them together the next. I'm telling you, they're the Minus brothers. They're a guaranteed -3 every night if they play together.
You've heard of the Charleston Chiefs Hanson brothers. Now it's the Minus brothers.
The Minus brothers.
Coming to
the
the
Minus
XL
brothers.
Energy
Just,
Center.
Guys on the ice for goals against, consistently. Number 4 and 33.
Here's what and this is a lot of cap space to just kind of have now putting him on LTIR. But I want to see the first priority. You're no longer the Minnesota Wild approaching the deadline. You are the Minnesota Middlemen. You are the team that is holding on to cap space for others as they wheel and deal at the deadline. Oh, that's fine. You can't afford a $1.5 million cap hold? Well, guess what? We've just had $7.75 million allocated, and we have a deal for you. It's only going to cost you the low price of a 5th-round pick or a 4th-round pick. That's fine. We can wheel and deal. We have no problem doing your dirty business. The Minnesota Middlemen are going to be charging up the draft board, stacking up those picks, raking in all the capital, and I cannot wait to watch this happen.
I love this thought. The only problem, and we actually talked about this on the show Wednesday with Declan and Jesse, without a cap guy, the report from the Athletic is that the National Hockey League Central Registry Office is helping the Wild with their cap, and there's not necessarily a person in the building that now understands the cap, which is where you made some great trades last year. You got Dmitry Orlov from Washington and sent him to Boston. ROR from what at the time, Toronto?
Yeah, Toronto.
and send him I'm sorry, from St. Louis and send him to Toronto.
That's
but
right.
The point is, but the point is, you have to have I ain't claiming I get the cap myself, but you got to have that guy. So does Billy have somebody who can actually help him? I love your idea. I love the thought, but I'm going to tell you right now, I give Bill Guerin as much of a chance of really comprehending the cap as I do AJ or Judd, which is to say it's probably pretty small. I mean, he ain't a mathematician and neither are we. Well, I shouldn't speak for you. Neither am I.
I'm the furthest thing from. I would say that's why I'm sitting here talking to you and not with my 3 roommates who I lived with in college, who are all accountants in that field of work.
Have them join us.
Hey, I'll call them up. They can crunch some numbers for us. I'm sure they wouldn't mind.
All right, sir. Thanks much. We're done. Again, you could call it a very disheartening, disastrous performance in Tampa Bay, or you could call it opportunity knocking again as the Wild moves up the tankathon, which is not a bad thing. Tomorrow night, the Florida Panthers, I believe, correct?
Yes.
Is that, and then Carolina on Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
I see 2 more opportunities to continue this horrid stretch of hockey.
And you know what the best thing about those 2 games are? We're on the East Coast, 6 p.m. puck drop tomorrow, 4 p.m. on Sunday. Nothing like a little matinee action.
Oh, God, yeah, there's nothing. Gone are the Northwest Division days of 9 o'clock starts when Judd did not like that. All right, sir, thanks much. Check out all of the Score North stuff at our YouTube channel. Much appreciated for those who watched. And if you're listening now, just remember, there's nothing like an opportunity to reset your team.